Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back. Today we have Lacey reading Ken Shoulders number 19, which looks really interesting. So thank you, Lacey.
Yeah, and thank you for having me read this.
Mhm.
Charge clusters, the work of Ken Shoulders. Our cover article in this issue is about charge clusters, which are compact groups of electrons. They defy the common belief that such things cannot occur because of the great repelling forces these electrons should exert on each other. Yet they do appear to exist and are not even that difficult to create once you know how. Ken Shoulders knows how and has been doing it for about 25 years. Ken and his son Steve experiment with charge clusters, also called exotic vacuum objects or EVOs, in a well equipped, privately funded lab in California. Ken has a history of working at the edge of science and engineering. He worked at SRI International for 10 years as a staff scientist and started a field now called vacuum nanoelectronics, which is based on field emission active devices. He also worked at MIT. During this time, he fabricated the world's first microcircuits and later did some exotic and confidential work for the CIA and others. Ken's very qualified background has helped convince many people that the EVO phenomenon is real, in spite of the difficulty in believing that electrons can form such clusters. Ken notes nobody believed anything ever said. They only believed the gadgets that were run by EVs. I actually had to almost beat the patent office into submission by a series of brutal assaults with my devices. Not only are the clusters themselves exotic to mainstream science, but they seem to offer a way of connecting to the most fundamental and universal element of existence, sometimes called the ether. Ken refers to this as the potentum, a name given by Joe Firmage. Whatever the name, it is a little understood part of the universe that many agree is loaded with energy if we only knew how to tap into it. The EVO may be the fundamental connecting link. Ken considers it a kind of universal clutch, as it clutches the basic fabric of the universe by biasing the medium with a dense asymmetrical charge distribution. This is a very powerful concept and may well be the foundation of any device that operates with an efficiency over unity.
Wow.
Joe Firmage.
Yeah,
I have Joe's prototype device in my bedroom.
that's right. That's right. I remember that. Very cool.
This
Her
clutch.
name is Ellie.
Oh, wait, what was that?
Her name is Ellie,
Ellie?
Ellie?
as in the movie Contact. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes, very cool.
This clutch apparently can operate in many environments. EVOs are likely the source of the extremely high temperatures recently measured in collapsing bubbles formed by cavitation. Temperatures as high as 20,000 degrees K have been measured. See page 37. Temperatures in this range need an exotic explanation, and EVOs exhibit extremely high temperatures. Sonofusion is likely triggered by the same mechanism and may not really qualify as cold fusion. The destructive effects of cavitation on marine propellers has been known for over 150 years, but never explained satisfactorily. Likewise, the cavitation that can occur in pumps. There have been many claims of over-unity performance in pumps designed to produce a lot of cavitation, but never enough to be useful as an energy source because the input is electrical and the output is heat at moderate temperatures. Tesla is known to have been able to create what appeared to be ball lightning and even was able to let it touch him without harm. Ball lightning is probably a large charge cluster. It is not well understood, but can appear in lightning storms, coming and going in mysterious ways, sometimes quietly and sometimes with a great deal of commotion. Understanding charged clusters better may clarify some of Tesla's work, as well as give a better understanding of a strange natural phenomenon. I have mentioned before that it may take decades from now to market a useful over unity or free energy device. I base that on the work that Ken and others are doing in the cutting edge of this science. Ken has been working on this problem for 25 years, and cold fusion / LENR, low energy nuclear reaction work, has been going on for over 15 years. This is difficult work that requires a rare combination of creativity, persistence, energy, and attention to fine detail. It also involves the ability to improvise because of a lack of funding, and all too often a thick skin to put up with the unimaginative naysayers. On top of all this, the work can also be dangerous. EVOs contain incredible potential energy for their size, and it is not difficult to make them big enough to blow up a lab or more. The work to date is much more science than engineering. Through doing the science often involves considerable engineering. This is quite different from the engineering that goes into an energy machine that could be sold to the public as an appliance or to a utility as a generator. We are still a long way from that. Fundamental understanding needs to progress to the point. Where results are consistent, reliable, safe, and can be had at reasonable expense, only then can a product be engineered around the concept. This will take many years and many dollars. One of the most difficult problems in the new energy field is funding for good ideas. This is because of the very long time to market by conventional investment standards and because of the great difficulty of evaluation of the potential of the technology. A significant part of the evaluation problem is caused by the fact that most new energy concepts are either pure bunk or just on the wrong path. The very encouraging part of what Ken and Steve are doing is that, 1, they have great credentials for understanding this work. 2, the experimental techniques are very good and the associated theory is sound. And 3, the potential payoff of this approach is huge. This technology has the potential of being engineered into a very powerful, compact, and economical machine with endless variations and applications. There is still the problem of time to market. Investors who are inclined to take this kind of risk like to see the potential of making 30 or 40% annual returns. This is not only because they want to make a killing, but because so many ventures fail that each winner must support several complete losses. This means that even if an idea looks like it will be worth $1 billion when developed, it may not be worth enough to an investor to put the required money in during the early phases of development. It is very realistic that a given idea from concept to product could take 20 years. If it is worth $1 billion in 20 years, it is now worth only $5.2 million discounted at 30%, and only $1.2 million discounted at 40%. Since it will often take more than this to even get traction with the idea, it is clear that even if the inventor sells his whole idea to the investor, he will not have enough money to do the work. Actual cases are probably much worse than this. The project will take longer, cost more, and may even have completion problems when it is finally on the market. Ken has mostly self-funded his work to date, and the potential is so big that there ought to be a good investment opportunity in the work. But the time to market is still unknown, and the real cost of development is unknown. This means the investor would still have to have a very long-range vision and deep pockets. These are hard to find. More conventional technology gets funding in the many established ways, including private investors, venture capital, corporations, and governments. These avenues are rarely open to risky and long-range projects. Many historic inventors, such as the Wright brothers, funded their own work for the same reasons, but technology has gotten orders of magnitude more complex in the last 100 years, and this method is only open to the truly wealthy today. The new energy field needs more people willing to give grants to promising ideas with minimal strings attached. Many foundations exist for endless causes, few of which come close to offering the result that some of the good ideas in the field offer. Foundations don't invest because they hardly even know the new energy field exists, and they have no way of evaluating ideas, even if they learn about them. There are very few people qualified to evaluate this technology. Even if they are very knowledgeable in the general field, it is very difficult to make judgments of work done by others without spending a lot of time with the innovator. This is expensive, and often the innovator is reluctant to expose critical parts of the technology. Furthermore, a hired consultant is usually correct if he declares that there will be a lot of problems and recommends against investment. A new energy peer review process involving a credible group of scientists and engineers would be very helpful in selecting the best technology for funding, but this won't happen soon. The whole nature of the field is against it. Many are innovative in their own project, but not interested in others. There are theories and there are experimental results that may or may not be facts, and the two often don't agree. These problems are not necessarily anyone's fault. It is a logical result of a few people trying to solve huge problems using a science they don't understand yet. A lot of planes crashed before and after the Wright brothers for the same reasons. The net result is that at this time, investors in this field must be willing to take large risks. Even a nonprofit foundation or private donor cannot take excessive risks, or their money and credibility will soon disappear. There are a few generous and thoughtful donors in the field today, but much more is needed to generate some traction and get a useful device out in the market. Infinite Energy's founding editor, the late Jean Malove, was an advocate of taking even a very simple device into the market, even if it was just a toy, to generate interest and publicity. This is still a good idea, but even that modest goal is very elusive. I have lost track in the number of magnetic motors that people have gotten excited about, but never have heard a credible story about one that actually worked. A concentrated effort is needed on a chosen technology to achieve Jean's goal. The EVO technology has promise of yielding very exciting results with a fairly modest amount of funding.
Wow. Well, thank you, Lacey. That was amazing reading. I
Yeah.
guess the one thing that I wanted to point out was on the first page again, and it says the EVO may be the fundamental connecting link. Ken considers it to be a kind of universal clutch, as it clutches the basic fabric of the universe by biasing the medium in a dense asymmetrical charge distribution. Chip, isn't that really the secret sauce?
Yes, it would seem to be when you produced a torsion field, and everything seems to be torsional in the vacuum.
Yeah,
We create gravity, we create a path for time, 3D time. We create a path for frill generation, consciousness. It is that potentum, like Joe Firmage says, that is apparently quiet until you look at it
right.
or inject a thought, and suddenly you manifest reality. And the reciprocity starts then, which you've talked about yourself, Ed.
Yeah,
And the terahertz frequencies, and then it settles down again and becomes quiet. And therein lies consciousness,
yeah, and
the magic barbecue sauce of everything.
yeah, exactly. And Paul Laviolette's definition of etherons is, he says that are they conscious entities? And that's what we believe. And even Lacey,
Mhm.
that thing that you got from Ryan Wood that we read not last week but the week before, that was amazing. And it talked about etherons quite a bit too, right? And some of the stuff that you had actually saw
Yeah.
with them
And
as
it talked
well.
about how they were toroidal, like this is saying, like Chip said.
Yeah, yeah. So everything is the same, because that's what Paul Laviolette was. He was a quantum physicist who asked the question, what makes up the quantum? And it was subquantum, but he was also an astrophysicist. So he looked at the very small and the very large, And like Lacey has said before, everything is fractal. It needs to be the same all the way up the scale, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
As it
Like,
is. Yeah.
like those Russian eggs that are nested, inside of each other,
Yep.
layers of an onion.
Yep. Yeah, exactly right.
Everything's fractalized.
Yeah. And it's kind of neat because Lacey and I did the interview with Chris Beskar recently, and I think Stavati Aerospace in the long run is really going to be the ones that are really going to start showing this technology in years to come. And Lacey, what did he say about the hover car prototype?
He said that the hovercar prototype would come mostly in a year to 3 years, but leaning towards more a year.
Yeah, and to watch the SM 36 Stelma program to see where they're at with various stages of anti gravity, including four different kinds, actually. I remember when Chris told me that, he said of the four different ways to fly the hover car, we have three operational already. And I couldn't put my finger on the fourth one, but Lacey, I think you did. The last one. What is that one?
Thought propulsion.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Frank Chili talks about in that interview or that thing that he did when he talked about releasing the Rockwell space chart,
Yeah,
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Does anyone have any other comments or anything about what Lacey's read and awesome work of Ken Shoulders?
Well, just a couple of musings, if you will. Um, the transmutation capabilities of the clusters going through metal and whatnot is very nice, and that's experimental stuff we can quantify and see it in real life.
Yeah.
But there would appear to be a quantum tunneling, foundation to that we don't necessarily understand. And quantum tunneling keeps coming up again and again with various superconductivity experiments. Well, even a squid itself,
Yep.
superconducting quantum interference device, uses Josephson junctions. And there's a quantum tunneling effect there where the charge clusters, much like a soliton in an acoustic wave, literally will pass right through things without phase, frequency,
Yep.
or linearity distortion.
Yep.
And you have to ask, why does that occur at a nanophysics scale, but not at a classical scale?
Right.
And so there's a real secret to pursue there. You would like to have a grand unified theory of physics from classical sizes all the way down to nano sizes, but we don't. And it's interesting to watch the physicists struggle with that concept, trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
And so many of these things that, like this quantum tunneling effect that charge clusters demonstrate, like the clutch aspect that they demonstrate, where it's just almost a universal potentum that they create, is obvious in many of these experiments that Ken did. And yet we don't have it. Quantum electrodynamics still doesn't have good explanation for how to do the mathematics on it and various other things.
Yeah.
And a lot of it goes back to our foundation in Maxwell equations and Lorentzian quaternions and things like that, where you have an assumption of flat space.
Yeah.
Minkowski space, it's called, right? And I know I'm just rattling on here, but I just want to kind of throw it out and see if the spaghetti sticks on the wall with anybody.
Yeah.
So, everything you're talking about.
Yeah, and so let me finish.
Just digested all these things, and it's funny because people like sit there and they're like still confused, but like all this stuff is. And I guess I got to start making videos of my own or something like that. Like this is all crystal clear to me. I mean, this is actually kind of like, it seems kind of like easy and it all makes perfect sense. But it's almost like, and you kind of need a foundation what to base your stuff on, especially because the average person has been just manipulated from day one, and they kind of just zone out and watch TV or whatever the hell their thing is. They don't spend time thinking about it, but it's actually not that difficult. And I think most people, when you actually show them how the mind centers all things, and show them a couple of, I'll bring his name up every time. You show them some Walter Russell drawings, show them like the centripetal. When you're funneling down to a point, everything is vertical motion. That heat, like cold compressed stillness, is actually the source of all power. Like that's actually like the most energized state, even though according to our backwards world right now, with our messed up ideas of energy and matter, and we see everything through this lens of Einstein. It's funny because the guy Eric Doherty teases all the Einsteiners, he calls them, and it's funny because that's been the tale that's been told to us since the 20s and even before, almost like powers that be, they get wind of this stuff, the free energy stuff, and they put a kibosh on it. And they've been telling us, oh yeah, like even the relativity is only one lens to look at things specifically with energy and matter. And it does it through light, which they say is the fastest speed of it. It's a reference frame. All it is one reference frame. You look at C squared, it's a 2 dimensions. If you want to make a Cartesian but it's funny, but like I had this thought when I was driving up here from Pennsylvania to New York. C squared is also complete combustion, which is basically what you have when you go down to that. They were talking in this article, they were talking about cavitation. That's like when you collapse to a point that literally it's a small scale. When you start to get down, think like literally matter disappears. And they even showed this when they had some free energy devices like Paul Pantone's Geet device, where he was like literally like zero combustion. They even say, and it's funny because at the source of creation or destruction, at that kind of event horizon, there's always a light flash. And they even said in that Geet device, which basically you could put anything in there. So you can put, you started with a little bit of like a normal combustion product, but after that, you're running on pickle juice, whatever the hell you want to throw in there, and it literally will combust it down to nothing. You go look in the exhaust pipe, have nothing. But in any case, he said he puts a steel rod in there just to initiate the vertical action. He said you'd see lightning bolts. He said he made one out of glass one time. He said you could literally see lightning bolts there in the same ball lightning. That's just like the telltale because, light is, the thing that God can communicate to man. And usually at that, and the one thing that's interesting is, and the other guy I bring up, who Paul knew of his work quite well, is Randy Mills. Again, his theory, I think he's got the U1 thermo down pat, even though he doesn't recognize the true nature of time. But he talks about, and I'm losing my thought as I'm saying it. Oh man,
I think that what Chip said, but really subquantum kinetics is actually the closest theory that explains it, and it's a theory of essentially mountains and valleys, if you want to think about it that way. If you look at the topology of the mountains on Earth, there's a correlation back to subquantum kinetics, right? So it's pretty interesting stuff.
You have that potentum sitting right there in full view, and we work with this flat space, this Minkowski space that is completely artificial because we've never incorporated Cartesian time.
Yeah, it's not flat. It's not flat. That's the thing.
It's always curved.
Exactly.
At least stable, and then can be curved with a single thought in a split second. So you have that torsion right there, waiting to do all kinds of things, and it is many different flavors of torsion, but it ends up being the very same thing. Yeah. And so the question comes up, like Mike's kind of implying here, the question comes up, do you throw the baby out with the bathwater with classical physics when you have so many catastrophic things wrong with it, including relativity? Do you throw it out? Because, like I was saying, I was witnessing the struggle that David Clements was having with the Backstage group, trying to explain his formal education and shoehorn all this stuff, and he's very knowledgeable on this. And, strong and weak interaction and emergent forces, and trying to put, multiple flavors of quarks into the problem. And the classical model is very good. We've been throwing protons at shit now for about 100 years at high velocity and having all kinds of subatomic particles spray out. But we keep missing the essence. With classical physics, we keep missing the goddamn target every time somebody gets involved with it.
Yeah.
So it's almost at the point, where you think, if we don't include 3D time at the very least into the standard model, we will go nowhere.
Yeah, I
It
agree
has
with
to be
that.
done. It had to be done yesterday, actually 100 years ago,
Yep.
and then proceed. And that almost would seem to require
So,
throwing out everything, almost starting over.
if you go
And
look at
that's subquantum kinetics,
And
basically.
Yes, based
if
on
we
that
look at
foundation.
even other technologies that, I mean, I'm going to be really honest. If we look at technology that extraterrestrials have, they do have time technology.
Yeah.
And so it's like they are a great model of like where we're going into the Star Trek future. And so I think that time is in fact like a part of that. And yeah.
Yeah.
It would seem based on the J Collective, and I referred to them a couple of times, that time is the driver for gravity. Temporal anisotropy at a quantum level creates gravity. It is emergent from that, not a fundamental force, like so many physicists want to believe.
Yeah.
And so when you start with that, you ask yourself, how in the hell can I come up with a grand unified theory when so many fundamental things with Newtonian physics are wrong?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of edging towards here in the last couple of years. And along comes Ken Shoulders, and he asked me into this group ed, and I learned a whole hell of a lot in 6. And it resonates. It makes sense. We're right down at that level where consciousness.
Yeah.
If
Consciousness is the driver.
It's everything.
Yeah, and that's again from subquantum kinetics. We always have to remember about Paul Laviolette and his looking at consciousness. The etherons basically create the Turing wave, and they go from space time to time space and back and forth again, right?
So they themselves are conscious, correct?
Yeah, they are conscious entities. So that's really where it starts, right?
Which means that everything on the very base of it is full-blown consciousness.
Yeah. And so, as I was listening to David Chester and the backstage group go back and forth with Damon Riddle and a few other folks, trying to put a square peg in a round hole, I'm thinking, what if you just wiped the slate clean and said everything literally is conscious?
It is.
And now you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You suddenly don't give a shit about strong and weak interactions and emergent forces and all the complicated fucking tensor math that you have to do to make any sense of what's coming out of the Large Hadron Collider, for Christ. And just say everything is including the rock that's on the floor that doesn't recognize itself in a mirror. But if that's the case at the SQK level, Jesus Christ, what a simplification that makes.
Well, Chip, there's only five differential equations that subquantum kinetics uses at that level. So it is quite simple, actually. The only thing that makes it complicated is it's not a closed system. It's an open system. And there's no Big Bang. There's no real start or end to the universe either. That's the other thing.
It's negentropic.
Yep.
Not necessarily time reversal. We got into that argument the other night. There is a differentiator there relative to medbeds. You can have negentropy in a medbed and fix skin problems and cancers, but my hair's not going to regrow and my prostate's not going to start to shrink with a time reversal process. And so, when we get older, Lacey, that kind of shit happens.
unless we have, because Frank Chili has talked about age regression, and Frankie is
I actually think yes, you can. I mean, that's actually. I mean, I've actually healed the body in amazing ways.
And so where does that start? Where does that?
Need to know. We lost all homeopathic plant medicine.
I think
everyone used to walk barefoot and things like that.
There's certainly connection to guys, a big deal. But what were you going to say, Ed?
I think it starts with consciousness again. You have to go back there. Yeah.
Every issue in the body is actually it links to stuff, mentally. Like when people have certain issues with certain things, it links to certain chakra systems, which are essentially EVOs and charge clusters too. Our auric field is all made out of charge clusters, and yeah, so everything's made out of consciousness, and we do have the conscious ability to heal ourselves. It's just a matter of getting the human race to get to that point, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And Solomon, who's in the Saturday group with Paul Laviolette, he's just finishing. He's probably the first person in the world to do his PhD based on subquantum kinetics, and he's a chemist, and he's talked about how these links are basically etherons. The chemical bonds that he works through and whatnot are basically etherons. So etherons are conscious entities at the subquantum level where the Turing wave is, but as you come up the fractal scale, they're also doing work all the way up. So really, are they the ones that are clutching the ether and doing that work? And I would say yes, because I remember Chris Beskar and I talking, and I said that I believe that etherons, charge clusters, and ball lightning are all one and the same. And in fact, that is the case essentially.
Yeah. In a more metaphysical area or a more metaphysical argument, I guess the next step would say, you say everything is conscious. Well, that is also source.
Yeah.
There's no entity out there called God or source or creator. It is a metaphor for consciousness. Consciousness is source.
I've said that the Turing wave is the heartbeat of source in our universe.
There you go.
In this dimension. Yeah, yeah. And that again comes out of subquantum kinetics and Paul Laviolette, who was way ahead of the game. Definitely.
I also suspect, having mused about this, I also suspect even the very high dimensionals still struggle with the issue. There's always a carrot hanging on a stick for every race in the universe. I swear to God, even the 9 are probably still wondering what the hell consciousness is and what is source. Source is supposedly a 13th dimensional intelligent
density,
plasmoid entity of some kind.
13th density, yeah.
Yeah, but what if it's just fucking everything?
Well, it is.
It's self-referential, self-aware, intelligent plasma that is constantly potentiating and differentiating and torsion fielding and everything else, torquing the shit out of everything.
Yeah.
And is the literal engine room for everything that we can leverage.
And it's all connected.
Yeah. Beautiful. Cool. Well, maybe we should stop the recording now, guys.
Are you recording that? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, Lacey. Stop the recording.
Please.
Thanks. Bye.
I see Charles has